Welcome to Read Poems Every Day. Last night, when I was playing trivia with some friends, we missed a question about a mid century American poet. We were asked to provide the name of the poet. I can't remember the question. Apologies. The answer turned out to be Jack Kerouac. Now, I didn't really study the beat poets much as an undergraduate or even as a graduate student. So when asked about an American poet, Kerouac's name never even came to mind. So that led me, while we were playing, to look up some poems by Kerouac, and I kind of half teasingly read these to my friends. They were all three-line poems. Another person on our team joked, "What are they, haiku?" And I just laughed because for some reason I didn't scroll to the bottom of the Poetry Foundation page and see that, in fact, the poems were taken from a book of haikus that Jack Kerouac is famous for. So let this be a lesson that even if you have a PhD in literature, there are very obvious facts about literary history that somehow passed you by or that you passed by in your education. Anyway, shortly after that, I then thought, hey, maybe I should do a video on these poems. Again, half kidding. And then this morning, I thought, why not? How about we do that? There are three poems on Poetry Foundation by Jack Kerouac. So what I thought we might do, since they are so short, is I'll read all three of them, but then slow down with the third one and just take some notes. What does it actually look like? Is it a little silly and ridiculous to apply so much study effort to a poem so short? I hope we'll see that in fact it's pretty worthwhile. So on the left side of your screen, this is Jack Kerouac's one haiku by Jack Kerouac, and I'll just read it and then read the one on the right side of the screen. In my medicine cabinet, the winter fly has died of old age. That's one poem. Useless, useless. Heavy rain driving into the sea. Okay. Third one. The bottom of my shoes are clean from walking in the rain. All right. So let's turn on hypothesis here and see if it's kind of worth. I think it will be. I think it'll be interesting to see what it's like to apply this rather elaborate study method to just a few very short poems that took me less than a minute, I think, probably, to read out loud. Okay, so of course these are all three-line poems. They're haikus. Haikus. The lines don't follow. You probably wrote some haikus in school, maybe, and you were probably taught that they follow a certain syllabic pattern, 5 7 5 syllables. Kerouac clearly does not follow that method here. In my medicine cabinet, like that's I think an 8 syllable line. The winter fly, that's four, and so you can see that the that Kerouac's haikus are not the haiku is not organized according to a strict syllable count. So I think I'm getting yelled at by one of my cats. Hey bud, you want to come be on camera? Come on. He might come up here. We'll see. But let's count them anyway. The bottoms of my shoes. So we have a six beat are clean, 2 beat from walking in the rain, 6 beat lines here. Useless, useless, that's 4 beats. Heavy rain, driving, that's 5. Into the sea, that's 4. So you see that 6 2 6 4 5 4. You see that Kerouac is still giving some syllabic structure, at least, to his poems. In my medicine cabinet, that's 8. The winter fly, that's 4. Has died of old age, that's 5. So this one varies quite a bit more, and it's possible I'm reading medicine cabinet. I'm sort of um, enunciating each syllable perhaps a bit too exactly, and maybe you're meant to read it in a kind of contracted way. Who knows? Anyway, so 3 lines. Hey, buddy, on camera here. Hey, man. Blow this up a bit. No, he's gone. All right, back here. 3 line poems. Of course, they're haiku. 6 beat, 2 beat, 6 beat lines. That's this one, the bottom of my shoes. Um, what else? Enjambments, of course, they're every line is enjammed. The bottom of my shoes are clean from walking in the rain. That's not always the case, though. Every line is enjammed here, but not here. In this haiku, there is a punctuated pause. In fact, a caesura and a punctuated pause at the end of the first line. But every line is enjammed here. No punctuation here. It's just meant to come out in one go. The bottom of my shoes are clean from walking in the rain. Just if you stretch that out into a sentence, it would look like a normal sentence right there. 3 line poem, 626, every line enjammed, no punctuation. How are we doing on pronouns? Um, there's only one. There's the my there. So first person, singular, possessive, right? My shoes, the bottoms of my shoes are clean from walking in the rain. Okay, so those are our beans. I'm not sure there's anything we can really conclude from that at the moment, but that's okay. Sound and sense. Oops. Sound and sense. No punctuation plus enjambment equals just sort of one breath, no pause. Right. So that's our sense of the sound of the poem. It's very conversational, casual, descript, sort of matter of fact. Maybe it might be a better way of saying it. Um, the bottom of my shoes are clean from walking in the rain. I think we'll come around in just a second to seeing that there's the situation here might be more complicated than you might think, and in some sense is very illustrative of the way in which haiku, while purportedly appearing quite simple, actually are inviting us to imagine maybe in some cases a wider scenario that has other implications that we can kind of sit with and generate in our engagement with it. No punctuation, enjambment, one breath, no pause, conversational, casual, matter of fact. Okay. Okay. Hmm. Might go up here to beans. I don't usually count prepositional phrases because there's so many of them, but in a poem this short, it might be worth thinking about that of my shoes because we have some parallelism in the rain there with prepositional phrases, right? Okay. Sound and sense. First 2 lines form an independent clause that simply describes something about the speaker's shoes. Bottoms are clean. That's basically it. The bottoms are clean. So of my shoes is a phrase added to qualify the bottoms, right? The bottoms of what? The bottoms of my shoes are clean. The final line provides conditions that explain why the bottoms of the shoes are clean. And like the final turn of a sonnet, they also clue us in to a situation. Right, without that final line, we would have no sense of the situation. All you would you know, the bottoms of my shoes are clean. And that final line in just 5 words then also introduces us then to a situation. So what, some implications then. The speaker, the rest of the speaker's body is not clean in the same sense. You know, you wouldn't say after running through the rain, "Ah, I feel so clean." It's not like being in a shower and washing yourself, right? If anything, running through the rain makes you feel dirty, right? In a maybe somewhat ironic way. Um, Not dirty per se, but drenched, drenched, soaked. Like these are words we usually use to describe ourselves if we've been through the rain. The tops of the speaker's shoes, uh, that the shoes themselves might also be soaked, even ruined, depending on the kind of shoes they are, right? So I'm thinking, for instance, of the running shoes I wear. Not that these would be the kinds of shoes Kerouac's necessarily thinking about, but they breathe well because they're meant to. They're athletic shoes. Um, and if I run through the rain or step in a puddle when I'm going running, my feet get absolutely soaked because they're not waterproof, right? They're not waterproof. So again, the bottoms of your shoes, if you're walking through the rain, get clean from the friction and also um, from that movement, but the rest of the shoe, the rest of the foot, the rest of the body don't get clean in the same way. Okay. So I think that's where we're going there. And I think we learned something maybe about the form of haiku, because if we take some of these insights that we've developed to then look at these other two, you see something similar happening where either the last line or the second part of each haiku, despite it being so concentrated into just 3 lines, introduces a kind of turn. Um, I'm not, I mean, there's also the sort of the strange description of the winter fly. Um, but I assume that's because we tend to think of insects or flies in certain regions of the world and country as associated more with, especially summer months. Um, and so by the time you get to winter, insects may have tried to come into the home in order to be warmer. And of course, they often die, right? They die. But then you get that oddly solemn and melancholy third line about dying of old age as opposed to something else. And then also makes us kind of go back to think about the medicine cabinet, sort of opening this cabinet in a bathroom and seeing a dead bug in there, right? In the middle of winter. And then here too, useless, useless. And then the last 2 lines, it's not, I mean, here we don't get really a situation at all. We get sort of embedded into an affect, right? An emotion, when we could describe that emotion as frustration, maybe exasperation. Um, but it's unclear if the final 2 lines are describing what the speaker is seeing, and the speaker is being is sort of inspired by this vision to associate it, turn it into a symbol of a feeling, or if it's a metaphor for the feeling, right? If it's a metaphor. So there's quite a lot of ambiguity, especially in this third example. The second one I read, but the third example, at least starting from the position of my analysis here of the bottoms of my shoes. Um, Okay, so I think we're at about 15 minutes. 15 minutes. In some sense, what I've just walked us through would maybe be how I would start the next step of my process of slowly getting to know a poem, which would be to consider the form of the poem, because I'm sort of thinking through the relationship of the different parts of the poem to each other. And even though these individual poems as haiku have very few parts, at least relative to other poems I've looked at on this channel and other poems, even a sonnet, which is also short, there are far fewer words, far fewer images in the individual poems. you can still think about their form because they're still made up of parts. And in fact, the organization of haiku emphasize the fact that it's made up of parts. Even if you're writing a traditional, 575 poem, the syllabic constraint of that um, is also imposing certain kind of formal rules that also afford certain ways of expressing ideas or observations about the world. And because they're so short, they lend themselves so well to things like suggestion, implication, and also something that's often associated with Kerouac, a kind of Zen like state of meditation, right? Uh, anyway, right. I am at about 15 minutes. I don't think I'm going to move into the next step of thinking about form and figures. But yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll come back to some of Kerouac's haiku at a later time. Maybe these exact haiku, and we'll finish fleshing out the notes. Um, we'll see. We'll see what occurs to me. The last couple videos I've made have been fun because they emerge out of just kind of accidental encounters, either with Instagram posts or things that get brought up at events that have nothing to do with this YouTube channel, and that's been fun. And I like how the channel is kind of weaving itself in and out of just the kind of happenstance of coming across poetry and poets, references to poets in my everyday life. All right. So how about tomorrow we keep reading poems and we'll see. Maybe I'll do another one.